Okay, welcome everyone. Really great to see you all in person. I just want to thank you all for your encouragement to get us out in person. Some familiar faces here that we've seen on Zoom at our public meeting for the draft remedial action plan for the Salmon Creek Bridge site. Also, I've seen some of you at our public meeting for the feasibility studies as well. That was a few years ago, so it's really great to meet some of you in person for the first time, and then meet some of you, new faces in person for the first time. My name is Asha Sethi, and we're all with the California Department of Toxic Substances Control, and we're providing oversight for the remediation of the Salmon Creek Bridge site. We're here to talk about the draft remedial action plan and environmental analysis. Just want to make sure everyone knows. I imagine all of you have been to this building before. Is this the first time for anyone? Okay, yes. Well, there's restrooms over here. Ladies is separate from the men's. And then we've got
a couple. Not have a lock on the door.
Oh, it does. Okay, there we go. And we've got a couple of exits over here and there. Let's see what else. Okay, sounds okay for everyone. Just let me know if we need to adjust along the way. We had a separate microphone that was wireless that isn't quite functioning, so we're just going to have to try and be as agile as we can with this one mic. So thank you for your patience with that. So next, could you move over to the next slide, please? All right, so here's our agenda, and this is pretty much we're presenting the same information that we presented on Zoom, but we want to make sure to do it again for those of you that weren't able to join us online. And so what we have here is Marika Hughes over on the far corner there, the branch chief of the Site Mitigation and Restoration Program, is going to just provide a quick overview of DTSC and our role in this project. And then Dennis Palacios over here, who's the project manager, is going to provide the project description and background, and the evaluation criteria and alternatives analysis that was used, and what the proposed remedy is. And then we've got John Hope here, who's our environmental planner, and he'll be talking about the CEQA, or the California Environmental Quality Act, and the initial study for the site. And then we'll go over next steps, and then we'll turn it over to you. We want to hear from you. That's why we came out this way. And then with that, I will turn it over to Marika. So bear with us as we pass the mic.
I should probably go over there.
Yes.
Thank you much. Welcome, everybody. I'm going to read from this because I can't read that. So an overview of what DTSC does. DTSC is one of 6 agencies as part of the California Environmental Protection Agency, otherwise known as CalEPA. DTSC's mission is to protect California's people, communities, and environment from toxic substances and to enhance economic vitality by restoring contaminated lands, enforcing hazardous substances laws, and compelling safer consumer products. DTSC's Site Mitigation and Restoration Program is responsible for overseeing the evaluation and cleanup of contaminated properties. I'll introduce a couple of our folks here. Not everybody that is listed is present, but a few of us are. You have Dennis Palacios there, who is the project manager for this. I am Marika Hughes. I am the branch chief for the Berkeley office. Asha Sethi is our fabulous fellow participation specialist. John Hope is our environmental planner. Vivek Mithrani and Jerry Ahrens are our technical support in both toxicology and geology. They are not with us today. The proponent for this project is Caltrans, District 1, and their consultant is Geocon. And with that, I will hand it over to Dennis.
So thank you for being here today, this evening.
Dennis,
Do you want the microphone?
yes.
Okay.
Let's go ahead.
Well, a
and do it
microphone would be
because-
better.
Yeah, because we want to make sure it's recorded.
Well, bear with me.
That's fine. You'll do great.
So what you see here, so slide 5, DTSC's cleanup process. So what you see here is just an overview of DTSC's cleanup process. So we'll begin with the evaluation phase, which starts with the discovery of a site. From there, we then verify release, define decontamination extent, and do risk assessments. And so once the risk assessment's been completed and a remedy is needed, then we move on to the remedy selection phase. So for the remedy selection phase, we do evaluate remedy options for them. So the remedy phase is what we're currently in for Sounding Creek Bridge. For the evaluation of remedy options, that was done for this site in the form of a feasibility study. And so once the evaluation of remedy options is complete, we then move on to preparing a remedy plan, the CEQA analysis, and then submit those documents for public review. Once the public review period is complete, the remedy plan is approved, the CEQA analysis is certified, and then we move on to the implementation phase. For the remedy plan on this site, it is the draft remedial action plan. And so for the implementation phase, we then prepare a site-specific design and monitoring plan, as well as construction, long-term operation, maintenance, and land restrictions if needed. So for this project, the implementation plan will come in the form of a remedial design and implementation plan. All right, slide 6. For the draft remedial action plan, the site incorporates Salmon Creek Bridge, which is pointer. All right. So Salmon Creek Bridge is here, and the adjacent areas to the bridge. So these private parking parcels. Some other features you'll see here in the satellite image is Springbrook Road, which is here, Whitesboro Grove Cove, sorry, and Little Salmon and Big Salmon Creek. All right, so slide 7, site details. So the Salmon Creek Bridge is located on Highway 1 in the city of Albion, within the Mendocino County. It spans Salmon Creek near its outlet into Whitesboro Cove, and consists of the state right-of-way, which is shown here in this figure in the red lines, as well as private properties, which are shown here within the green lines. The project site was previously occupied by the town of Whitesboro in 1870, and in 1916, a wooden trestle bridge was constructed over Salmon Creek and became part of State Route 1 in the early 1930s. The wooden trestle bridge was replaced by the current bridge which was constructed in 1950. And then just for additional information, this diamond-shaped area here is approximately 120 feet wide. All right, slide 8, source of contamination. And so based on the site history, the source of lead contamination is the sandblast waste from the Salmon Creek Bridge repainting activities that took place between the 1950s through the 1990s. Historical bridge paint sandblasting operations would cause paint chips to fall, which resulted in contamination. Prior to the 1990s, containment measures were not included during sandblast operations, but since 1999, the bridge painting operation has enclosed the bridge and sandblast waste has been contained. So slide 9, previous investigations. And so what you see here on the screen are previous investigations that took place at the site to date. Prior to DTSC's involvement, we had the preliminary site investigation, which was conducted in 2015. Then in 2017, under the oversight of DTSC, the preliminary endangerment assessment was conducted. And so as a result of the preliminary endangerment assessment, we then completed a time-critical mitigation measure, a supplemental site investigation, an ecological risk assessment, and then an addendum to the supplemental site investigation. So that addendum was done to sample locations that were previously not accessible. Then we collected shallow soil samples along Springbrook Road in the form of an aerially deposited lead site investigation. And then all that data was compiled into the feasibility study, which evaluated the data and the different alternatives. And then as a result of public interest, we did also conduct a public meeting for the feasibility study. So slide 10, contents of the draft remedial action plan. So what you can expect to find in the draft remedial action plan it outlines the remedial action objectives, explains the cleanup levels, identifies options for remediation, evaluates each remediation option, explains the reasons for the proposed remedy. Slide 11, remedial action objectives. So as part of the remedy selection process, Remedial action objectives are developed and used as a method to evaluate the ability of a remedial alternative to adhere to applicable or relevant and appropriate requirements, or ARRs for short, and to protect the human health and the environment. The remedial action objectives for the draft remedial action plan are the reduction of exposure for human receptors to soil contaminated with lead above the residential cleanup goal and commercial industrial cleanup goal along the state right-of-way. The second remedial action objective is the reduction of exposure for ecological receptors to soil contaminated with lead above cleanup goals. So slide 12, site contaminants. And so during the site investigations that were conducted between 2015 and 2021, collection of soil, pore water, sediment, and groundwater were performed and for characterization of site contaminants. And through our risk assessment, we identified lead as a human and ecological risk. Based on the site characterization performed, lead was identified as a site contaminant for soil and groundwater. And so it's worth noting that groundwater at the site is saline in nature and cannot be used for drinking water, which is why it wasn't further evaluated. Slide 13, cleanup goals for lead. So the cleanup goals that were established for the site are a combination of DTSC screening levels and the background concentrations for lead that were established for the site. So the two cleanup goals are based on the use of the area. So for the residential cleanup goals, it is a combination of the residential unrestricted land use screening level, which is 80 milligrams per kilogram, and the background concentration that was established, which is 9 milligrams per kilogram, which gave us the cleanup goal for the residential portion of the site as 89 milligrams per kilogram. For the state right-of-way, similar to the residential site, it was a combination of the screen level as well as the background, so the commercial industrial screening level of 320 and the 9 milligram per kilogram, which gives us a cleanup goal of 329 milligrams per kilogram. It's worth noting that the current cleanup goal for the state right-of-way is more conservative than our current DTSC screening level for commercial industrial. And so based on the 2020 ecological risk assessment performed, it was determined that human health-based lead cleanup goals are protective of the most sensitive wildlife. And so what that means is that the wildlife goal for lead has a higher concentration than both the residential and commercial cleanup levels. And so by meeting the human health goals, we will also be protective of ecological receptors. Slide 14, concentrations of lead in soil. And so based on the site characterization data and human health risk assessment, lead was the only identified contaminant concern. Lead concentrations were observed to decrease as you go further east from the bridge, with the highest detection on the east side of the bridge being 6,100 milligrams per kilogram. The concentrations were low to the west of the bridge, and concentrations tend to decrease with depth to approximately below the residential cleanup goal at 2 feet below ground surface. There are some locations that do have exceedance, but generally most are below the residential cleanup goal at 2 feet. So concentrations of lead in the Salmon Creek sediment were generally within that background concentration level. Slide 15, evaluation criteria. So the criteria you're seeing on your screen right now is used to evaluate the remedial alternatives presented in the draft remedial action plan. These 9 criteria come from the United States National Contingency Plan, which are here presented based on priority. And so for the first criteria, we have the threshold criteria, which includes the overall protection of human health and the environment, compliance with the state and federal requirements, applicable for relevant and appropriate requirements, which is ARR for short. And then we move on to the balancing criteria, which includes long-term effectiveness and performance, reduction of toxicity, mobility, or volume through treatment, short-term effectiveness, implementability, cost, and then we move on to the modifying criteria, which includes regulatory agency acceptance as well as community acceptance. Slide 16. 16, the draft middle action plan, evaluation of alternatives. So based on the evaluation and refinement process that was done during the feasibility study, we then moved forward with these 4 alternatives. And so these, the first alternative is no action. And so this alternative is used as a comparison tool for the other alternatives that are being proposed for other sites as well. Alternative 2, institutional controls, includes administrative and governmental controls. So a land use covenant includes site access restrictions, which could be in the form of a fence, informational and or communication devices, which can be signage, and monitoring, including monitoring of air and site conditions in conjunction with the excavation or grading activities. For alternative 3, we have complete removal. And so this involves the removal of all sandblast waste, contaminated soil containing lead concentrations above cleanup goals. And then for alternative 4, targeted removals, we have 2 separate removals, so 4A and 4B. 4A being the preservation of natural slopes and wetland areas, and 4B being preserved natural slopes. So both targeted removal alternatives are still protective of human health. And so slide 17, the proposed remedy alternative 4B, preserve natural slopes. And so under the target removal alternative 4B, the removal of sandblast waste contaminated soil with lead concentrations exceeding the cleanup goals for state right-of-way and residential areas would be implemented. The areas that are designated as inaccessible, thickly vegetated, and on steep natural terrain within the lead concentration areas, but within close range to the residential cleanup goals, would not be subject to soil removal. For this alternative, the excavation of approximately 6,918 cubic yards of contaminated soil that would be disposed of at a permitted landfill. And so these areas would be backfilled with clean soil that's approved for use by DTSC. And so what I mean by approved for use by DTSC is that we would be setting up criteria to ensure that no new contaminant is brought onto the site. And so those criteria will be presented in the remedial design and implementation plan. And so as part of the excavation activities, the total depth of excavation would be shallow, ranging from 1/2 foot to 1.5 feet, and in some areas up to 3 feet. And so this alternative would also include the installation of erosion control materials and reestablishment of native vegetation, as well as the widening of Spring Grove Road to allow access for heavy equipment during the remediation work. Slide 18, justification for the proposed remedy. And so the recommended remedial alternative will remove majority of the lead impacted soil at concentrations exceeding cleanup goals while preserving steep, thickly vegetated natural slopes within the private parcel. So the primary factors that support the selection of this remedial alternative are: it meets the project remedial action objective, it will be feasible and effective in the long term, preserves steep, thickly vegetated slopes that are relatively inaccessible, will remediate the private parcels to unrestricted land use, and will include monitoring revegetation for environmentally sensitive areas. And so slide 19. So what you see here on the screen is the proposed remedial alternative, the colored hash mark areas. So these areas here, these areas here are within the natural slope preservation areas that will remain in place. The yellow shaded areas are the areas designated for excavation, as well as the black hashed area here, which was part of the time critical mitigation measure. The different points you see on the screen are different investigations that were done previously.
Excuse me, could you just help me understand the direction of the map? Like, where is Salmon Creek and where's the house?
So Salmon Creek is right here, Salmon Creek Bridge is right here, and so to the north is this way. Sorry, it's harder to show on the screen.
To the right.
Yes, to the right.
There is a north arrow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's a little, sorry if it's a little hard to see.
Exactly.
So yes, the north is to the right. Yes, we do have Salmon Creek here, the bridge running over.
Could you go slowly where the bridge is just for me?
Yeah, of course.
I
So
appreciate
right over here.
it. Okay. And so to the north is where I would think of it as to the south?
my laser pointer is the north.
Okay, got it.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah, it's easier to see if we have it this way.
There's a hard copy, you can turn it whichever way you
There
want.
you go. Perfect. Alright, so slide 20, truck traffic. And so for truck traffic, lead contaminated soil removed as part of the remedial alternative activities will either be loaded onto trucks and transported to a designated accepting landfill facility or temporarily stockpiled on site and then in a designated staging area for disposal at a later date. And so if soil is temporarily stockpiled, there will be some form of security measures to make sure that there is no unauthorized access to those stockpiles. So maybe a fence installed, and so that would be later detailed in the remedial design and implementation plan. So for soil designated as California hazardous waste, it will be disposed at a Class 1 landfill facility. And so here on the screen, what you'll see is Buttonville landfill as well as Kettleman landfill. For soil designated as non-hazardous waste, it will be disposed of at accepting Class 2 or Class 3 landfill facility. And so traffic control measures to be implemented will be included in the remedial design and implementation plans. Those will include the approved route for those trucks when they're disposing of soil. And so now I'll turn it over to John to discuss the sequel portion.
Yes, thank you all for coming out this evening. I'm John Pope. I'm a senior environmental planner for DTSC, and as the lead agency for the for decision on the RAP on the cleanup project, we have a responsibility to analyze the potential impacts to the environment of implementing the cleanup. And as part of some previous community meetings that we have on the feasibility study, well, let me back up. So as part of the analysis, we go through and analyze 20 different environmental topics that relate to the project. So as part of the feasibility study, there were 3 particular topics I would raise as a particular concern to this project and this project site. And those 3 included air quality, noise, and biological resources. So just as a quick restate of what our conclusions were in our CEQA document is that air quality emissions were determined to fall below the air district thresholds. Noise levels were determined to be temporary and not excessive. And then the proposed revegetation and preservation of sensitive biological communities that's proposed as part of the project would be considered to substantially reduce any impacts to a less than significant level. And again, as I mentioned, the project includes the revegetation and preservation of sensitive biological communities as part of the whole of an action as defined by CEQA as the project.
We'll take questions at the end.
Yeah, did you have, if it's a quick clarifying question, we can take it, otherwise we'll have plenty of time after the presentation.
Is there a clarification needed?
Does it, no, I'll ask the list.
All right, thanks. Go ahead, John.
Yeah. So we, as part of implementing the revegetation and wetland compensation and preservation of the sensitive biological communities, we will be working with other natural resources agencies to ensure that they're implemented and designed in a manner that brings or compensates the environment as best as we can and bring it back to as close as possible as its originally is. So just to state that even though Caltrans is the agency that would be implementing these revegetation activities, DTSC as the lead agency will retain the authority to ensure that the design and the implementation is done in the manner that meets our standards, not Caltrans standards. And as such, DTSC is committed to working with other natural resources agencies that have expertise in these topics. And one that we've already been in communicating and we're already starting communication with is the California Department of Fish and Wildlife. And so we'll be communicating and working with other agencies as well. So again, one of the questions I think that's been raised by people on this particular project is asking why an environmental impact report was not prepared. And I can only explain what the CEQA process is, and that there's a certain process, there's a certain direction that CEQA requires us to do, and one of the first steps that we do is to prepare an initial study. So an initial study is asks a number of questions for those 20 environmental topics. We go through and answer each of those questions. We analyze the different topics and environmental topics. And if you know the questions, that we come to a conclusion that there's going to be a significant impact, that's a significant impact that we cannot mitigate for, that we can't do something to bring that impact back down to a less significant level, then that requires us to prepare an environmental impact report. But for this project, and based on our analysis of what the cleanup activities will entail, and based on the activities that the proponent, Caltrans, is proposing to implement, it was determined that there wouldn't be any significant impacts in the long term, and that with the implementation of everything that's being proposed, including the revegetation, the wetland compensation, and preservation of sensitive biological communities, that there would not be result in any substantial, significant impacts. And so that is why we went forward with preparing a what's called an initial study negative declaration, and that's the document that's been presented to the public for public comment and public review. So I'll hand it back to Dennis.
Hey, John. All right, so slide 23, the remedial design and implementation plan. And so the remedial action plan does provide a brief overview of some of the implementation plans, but a more detailed discussion will be provided in the remedial design and implementation plan. And so some of the topics that will be covered as part of that implementation plan include pre-construction activities, excavation, stockpile, and staging of equipment, the transportation plan, construction drawings and technical specifications, revegetation plan, sampling analysis plan, community air monitoring plan, which will include a dust monitoring as well as air monitoring plan, and a health and safety plan. And so slide 24, additional agencies involved. And so once the preparation of the remedial design and implementation plan has begun, DTSC will be working with the agencies that are listed here on the screen. So the United States Fish and Wildlife, California Department of Fish and Wildlife, Coastal Commission, Mendocino County, National Marine Fisheries Service, North Coast Regional Water Quality Control Board, and the United States Army Corps to ensure that the plan is in compliance with their standards. So I will pass it back to Asha now.
And anything that we hear from you and anything that we get from you in writing, we will respond with a written comment after the close of the comment period. Next slide, please. And we've got all the documents available at both the Mendocino Library, and we also added another set of documents in the Fort Bragg Library due to community request. Everything's available online as well. If you have any trouble accessing documents online, definitely feel free to reach out to me because it can be challenging to navigate, and I can send you direct links to any documents. And then you can also sign up to receive any email alerts, like if you want to see what we're working on and any technical documents that we're reviewing. You'll get an email alert that something new has been added, and that's what Dennis does, anything that's available. Do you have a quick question for us?
Yes, could you go back one to his email address?
Oh, yes.
It's also provided in the handout.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's, Dennis Palacios, so dennis.palacios@dtsc.ca.gov. All right, move on to the next slide. I think we're done there. Okay, and please, don't hesitate to reach out to Dennis or I, and my contact information is also listed here. Feel free to give me a call, and our email addresses are the same format. So mine is asha.seti@dtsc.ca.gov. Call me anytime, or Dennis. So that is the end of our presentation. We want to hear from you. And I was thinking it might be nice to hear from, those of you that didn't attend or see our Zoom meeting, it might be nice to hear from you if you have any kind of clarifying questions on any of the slides that we presented. I know that you were raising your hand in the back, and I didn't know, you can start first, and if you want to go ahead and come up here so we can go ahead and capture, if you don't mind. Otherwise, if we have the wireless, I'd bring it to you, if that's okay.
You can hear me, right? Or do you want to?
Yeah, come on up. I want to make sure we capture it. All right. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
And here's a seat if you'd like.
Greetings, I'm glad you're here.
Here's a seat if you'd like.
Thank you. John, okay, all this revegetation, planting, design, is the design going to be inclusive of the whole idea of sea level rise? And I know your agencies you're working with, like the Coastal Commission, et cetera, but is the plan really going to speak to the future? And then the second part of the question is maintenance. It's nice to plant plants, but what about what happens next week? So that's really something that I think we all don't think about very clearly.
And would you mind stating your name?
Sure, Carrie Durkee.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Regarding the maintenance, I think that's a good issue to raise, and we will definitely take that forward to the natural resources agencies that we work with, and see what we can do to make sure that the revegetation is something that's not only implemented initially, but it also is something that's maintained over the years. Make sure that it that whatever is being brought in is being established in a manner that's going to be a long-term solution. And then
Sea level rise.
That's a little complicated. Typically, from my understanding, that sea level rise has been considered an impact onto a project and not a project impact on the environment. So essentially, CEQA does not require us to analyze sea level impacts because it's actually a reverse of the impacts.
You're kidding.
But if that's incorrect, if you believe that's an incorrect statement, please feel free to provide that as a comment.
And can we also, and we do have a process to evaluate sea level rise at DTSC.
We do.
Maybe that's something that Dennis or Marika can
I
speak to.
believe that's separate from CEQA.
Yeah,
Yeah,
separate from
that is
CEQA.
separate from CEQA.
You want to pass it on to Dennis?
Yeah, and so the draft remedial action plan does evaluate sea level rise as part of the overall project. It does take into account how the proposed remedial alternative will be affected by sea level rise. And so it was determined that if we are doing the removal and to soil contaminated with lead, that sea level rise wouldn't be affected for the project.
And then I just wanted to add on to your concerns, Carrie. You were expressing concerns about the whole, how is this going to be a successful project related to revegetation and all that. And there are going to be opportunities for public input along the way. The steps I think Dennis had mentioned was the remedial design and implementation plan. So that's a whole other separate document that takes time to develop. And that's where it gets into the real nitty gritty of all the details that you're talking about. And that's where those types of things will be addressed, and it'll be further fleshed out. And it'll be easier because this is super conceptual. So it's very kind of hard to, you all live here, you want to know, like, how's it all going to go down? And so that's going to be the next step. So next, yeah, come on up. Hi there. Go ahead and state your name.
Sure. I am Victor Simon, a resident of Albion. And one question that popped into my mind after seeing this was, can you explain why the cleanup goal of 89 milligrams is so far above the background level of 9 milligrams for residential?
And so for DTSC screening level for lead, the unrestricted land use level is 80 milligrams per kilogram. And so the study that was the preliminary endangerment assessment study that was done in 2017 did factor into what the background concentrations were of lead naturally at this project site. And so based on the background concentration that was determined, which was the 9 milligram per kilogram, it was a combination of that plus our DTSC unrestricted land use level. So our 80 milligram per kilogram allows for unrestricted use of the project site. If it wants to be converted into, let's say, example of residential housing, then they would be allowed to.
Does that answer your question, or are you wondering how are those levels determined? How is that number set? Do you want to speak to that?
So I'll say that, we don't typically clean up to background, we clean up to be protective of human health and the environment. And the number of 89 is considered protective of human health based off of all the toxicological data that exists. And that's why that was chosen. Typically the only metal that we clean up to a background level is considered arsenic. And that's simply because arsenic concentrations in California are always elevated, so it is impossible to achieve our actual screening level. So we do an evaluation based on background to select the number for that. But when it comes to lead, we typically go with the screening level.
Ricky, could you speak a little bit more about how the screening level, like who determines that number? You mentioned.
Oh yeah, so the screening level itself is based off of blood lead level. There are different evaluations that have been done to see what concentrations have specific impacts on people and specific types of people, because there are obviously different groups that we look at. And when we're looking at the residential number, we look at the exposure for children. And I think often we do the evaluation for what is considered a pica child, and that is a child that will eat a lot of soil. I mean, I think we all know that some children just eat a lot of soil in general. I know my dog likes to eat a lot of soil. And so the number is based off of that. There are different studies that are done to develop those criteria that go into the evaluation. But the research has shown that 80, and in this case 89, because we have a background of 9, is protective of human health. I don't know if that answers.
And then the other thing that I've heard from our toxicologists is that the levels are super duper protective. They're like
they're so protective.
Before you would even begin to see any health effects. So they're extremely, and unfortunately we don't have our toxicologist here to speak to that, but basically the levels are extremely protective, and we're really lucky in the state of California to even have these kinds of levels, because you look at federal levels for some, there's
I think the federal level itself for commercial is 1,000. So it's really important to know. Did they recently lower that? I can't remember.
It has been lowered, but there's a really important point I think that you might wish to address in response to the gentleman, and that is the RAP has a very short section on bioaccumulation, which is the ladder by which lead works up through species. And at the same time, the RAP omits analysis and remediation of lead in the public beach at Whitesboro Cove, which is the most likely place because the county LCP designates that as a public access way to one of the 4 public beaches in Albion. And the RAP completely misses that, and we all know that not just kids, but also adults wind up ingesting sand when they go to the beach.
So in order, sorry to interject, but I think I want to make sure that we got Victor's question or comment addressed before. It sounds like you've got your own comment or to
No, I was trying to point out that there was a gap.
Does that address your
Yeah.
comment?
Yeah,
Okay.
I have a couple more questions, but.
Okay, so we'll move it on and get back to
Yeah,
you?
yeah,
Okay.
sure.
And then somebody else had raised, yeah, come on in. Would mind saying your name?
My name is Melissa Hayes, and thank you very much for coming. It's a long way. I had just a comment. In your presentation, you indicated that the sandblasting happened between 1950 and 1990, I think. And I looked up when the United States created a statute that banned lead paint in the United States, and that was in 1970. So what happened was, it appears to me, is that for 20 years, the guys were out sandblasting that lead paint into our environment, and it was banned, but nobody was watching. I could be wrong on that, but that's what it appears. So I guess I just wanted to make that comment. But I have a couple of questions. Where does the clean soil come from that replaces the toxic soil? And you indicated that you wanted to widen Spring Grove Road, and I wondered if when you were done, if it was always going to be widened, and if so, how wide? Because we have small roads, we kind of like it small. And my concern was if you were going to dig out 478 truckloads of toxic soil, and then you are going to temporarily stockpile it at the bottom, right where you dug it out. I find that concerning. And I would like to know how long it's going to be temporarily stockpiled. And it would seem to me that if you're going to dig it out and you're going to do this whole truck thing, you ought to just get it out of here to someplace safe rather than just have it sit at the bottom, by the water and the creek and with all the animals and us. So those are my comments. Thank you very much.
Did you want to go in order of when was that? Sorry, go on.
And so the source of the clean soil, which I believe was your first question, so that source hasn't been determined yet. Part of what will be included in the but the remedial design and implementation plan will be that source of where the clean soil will come from, whether it be from quarry or from another location. And so part of what that remedial design and implementation plan will include is if, let's say, it comes from another location that we don't know the history of, it will include sampling of that soil, so that way we can ensure that there's no introduction of any new contaminant to the site. So if we do know the history of the site and it's well documented, and even there's a different process for that. If it does come from the quarry, then they may have some analysis for the soils. So we would so the criteria for the clean soil will be provided in the remedial design and implementation plan. For the second question regarding widening of Spring Grove Road, so the widening of Spring Grove Road, the actual widening, the length of it or the width of it, will be part of the remedial design and implementation plan, just because we will need to look into how much or how wide Caltrans will need to that until they do their studies and provide us with that information in the remedial design implementation plan. What happens after the remedial activities are completed? Again, we don't know right now what that will include. That will be something that will likely be discussed in the remedial design implementation plan. For your third question regarding stockpiling, how long it will stay in place, why stockpile it. So the location of the stockpiling hasn't been determined yet. That will be provided as part of one of the plans and the remedial design implementation plan. It will either be, if it is stockpiled on site for a temporary basis, there will be measures put in place to ensure that, if for some reason, while it's being stockpiled, it does rain, that there's no runoff, so that there's no recontamination of the project site or contamination on another portion of the site that was previously cleaned. So there will be measures put in place to ensure that there is no runoff. At the end of the day, they will likely cover the stockpiles to ensure that if there's any sort of wind that's occurring overnight, that it doesn't blow away, doesn't make the lead soil, doesn't blow away. Blanking on the term, but it's likely that the transportation of the excavated soil will be loaded onto a truck and disposed of at the accepting landfill facility.
May I just ask, I know that how long, if it were to sit there, you don't actually know.
No.
No, but may I ask, when this design plan comes out, maybe you said it and I just didn't get it, but do we get to comment on that, and what is the time frame on that?
So when you say time frame, do you mean when we can expect to have the remedial design
Yes,
implementation
so
plan?
we can review it.
That's a good question. I'm not too sure what the timeline looks like for when we'll have.
I would guess.
We don't even have it yet.
Yeah, so we don't have.
Couple
it
years?
yet.
And then
I'm guessing.
if you don't know, how do we get that information? Do you reach out to us, or
Yeah,
how
so
do we get
we
the
would reach out letting the community know that this document is available on EnviroStore.
And here, I can add on to that. Yeah, we want to make sure that you all know that it's coming, and then you have the opportunity to provide us input. It's not going to be a formal comment period like this is, but we'll hold something like this, another gathering, because we want to hear, because we know that's like kind of the critical pieces of it. And so we'll be sending out a mailer, just like we sent out a mailer for this, and we'll look for your help in getting the word out. We just want a similar process, basically. Even though it's not required, because we just know that's like a whole nother separate process, and it's going to be a large document as well. So we'll set some kind of parameters so that we can, we won't be able to respond to each and every written comment. So it'll be a different process, but we want to kind of lodge everything, what all your concerns are when we're reviewing that document before it's final. So like Dennis said, it'll be posted on EnviroStore. The draft document will be posted on EnviroStore, and we'll get copies of those documents out to the libraries, Mendocino and Fort Bragg libraries, and make sure that you have the opportunity to have enough time to actually read it and see it and thoughtfully comment on it. Yeah, and I just wanted to add on too about your concern about the stockpiles, and I think the length of time too. And is that, correct me if I'm wrong, is it because the soil needs to be characterized so that they can figure out where it needs to go? Why is there, basically her question is, why does there even need to be stockpiles? Why can't you just, like you're scooping it, can't you just move it along? Because we all know the elements out here are fierce.
They are.
Yes, there's no, and so.
Asher, you probably know that Caltrans last May published a natural environmental study that actually shows where the stockpile locations are. The Albion Bridge stewards mapped them on the map on the right, on the back wall. 2 of them are immediately adjacent to Ledford House. And the third one is at the top of Spring Grove Road. This is Highway 1, this is Spring Grove Road, here's Ledford House. One stockpile site identified by Caltrans is on the Upcoast side of Ledford House. The second one is in the overflow parking lot for Ledford House. And the third one is the site right above where Spring Grove Road goes down the bluff. Those are the sites that Caltrans, sorry about that, that's Caltrans itself identified, but that are not identified in the remedial action plan.
Okay, well, thank you for bringing that to our attention, and we'll make sure to, take copies, pictures of all the posters that you've provided us, and yeah, if you want to submit anything, written comment related to that, we'll absolutely be interested in reviewing that.
And you have the Caltrans report.
Yes. And so, okay, any other, so does that, Melissa, does that cover all of the, I just want to make sure that we covered everything that Melissa had to say about the.
I just want to second what she
Okay,
said.
okay,
I
sure.
think that this is a huge concern. If
Mhm.
they are excavating because
Yes.
it's contaminated,
Mhm.
and then they're not going to remove it, that seems counterproductive altogether.
Yeah, and that's again, in the RDIP will be the design plan. And if there's any other, my question was about stockpiles. Why the need? The question was, why the need for stockpiles?
And if you did, they should at least have a real minimum or maximum cutoff,
Yeah,
not
I mean-
longer than,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
it shouldn't be done at all.
yeah, the controls are gonna have to be really rock solid because, the wind, it's intense out there, so.
Yeah, and so whether they're going to do direct loading and disposing to an offsite facility or stockpiling, the reason and justification for those will be provided in the remedial design plan. I don't anticipate it being because of waste characterization, because we do have data from the previous investigations that were conducted. There may be a landfill facility that might need a more recent waste profile, so that might be one of the reasons, but again, it would be likely where the remedial design implementation plan provides us with just a justification for temporary stockpiling, as well as what the reason for that is.
And I'll add traditionally no more than 90 days.
I believe that we've all been on the highways enough in our long lives to see big piles of dirt with ripped plastic on it.
Yeah,
And things are spilling over, and that cannot happen here.
yeah, and I think we all take that really seriously, and I
Really
think
seriously.
especially for a site like this that is
Yes.
on a rugged coastline,
Yes.
it's gonna be,
And close
have to
to
be
restaurant.
above and beyond kind of the typical
Thank you.
controls.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
And you all, I know you all are going to be calling us. If you see, you're our eyes and ears out there, and so we want to hear from you if things aren't going well.
Asha, a bottom line question.
Okay, there's a
Why
couple
are
of
these
hands
things-
up there, Norbert. Do you mind? Okay, I'll get you after. Do you want to come up here? I'm sorry.
It's very short. I just want to ask.
You don't want to come up. Okay.
No.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead. That's fine.
I just want to ask, is that the first time you've seen those stockpile sites that Caltrans has indicated?
Good question.
So it is the first time I've seen the stockpiles that you have on the figure there.
They're straight out of the NES.
So I'll have to look at that report. I'll reach out to you in order for that the name of the reports that way I can take a look at it.
May 2023.
Yeah, and it sounds like I know that we have regular coordination calls with Caltrans, and I would expect that they should be bringing that up at our regular coordination calls. But thank you for bringing it to our attention.
Hi, I just made an assumption.
Okay, yeah, please do.
I've been trying to imagine how this is going to work when you take all that dirt out with the ocean right there and the water coming in now. And how are you going to work? I mean, how is that really going to happen? You take more and more dirt out and here comes the water. Did you understand my question?
Yes.
Okay.
And I think it'll be good. I think, we'll hold another public meeting as we get closer to that. I think it would be really helpful for this community to see, like, kind of the step-by-step, like concretely, like, you know, what is the equipment, and then the erosion control plan, and, you know, all the controls, and maybe even have, if we have an industrial hygienist assigned to the site, because they're in charge of reviewing the plans, the community air monitoring plan for the site, and I think it would be really good for you all to meet our industrial hygienist, because that's their role in all of this. And then you're next.
Oh, yeah, I'm Janet Declan, and I just wanted to share that I was born here. My family before me were born here. And so what about the exposure of lead to myself, my family, my friends? I mean, what exposure has happened to me personally for playing on that beach all my life? Growing up here and riding my horse down to the Salmon Creek Beach. And so what is the concern I have is, what did that do to my health? What did that do to my family's health? And even my 2-year-old son was at a child care, 1980 circa, down under the Salmon Creek Bridge. So I ask you, what health problems are we looking at, or are we dealing with? And our community, what have we dealt with? I mean, a lot of the community that use that beach are no longer alive. You know, I just happen to be one of the children that is still alive, and so what are we talking about? I mean, can you answer that at all? Or are any of you able to answer that?
I would not say that I'm equipped for that.
I have a couple more things I
And
just
Janet,
wanted to
yeah, I was just
share.
going to say, yeah, and we can have their toxicologist address your question.
Well, that's a question not just for me personally, but our community. And it's absurd to think that 478 dump truck loads of lead toxic waste is going to be excavated and then dumped on the top of those other sites? Why? I mean, don't you have control over this? Aren't you our safety? I'm going to hold this a little longer.
Oh, sure, go ahead.
Aren't you supposed to be our safety protectors? I mean, you are the only protectors. Caltrans don't care. They have shown us over and over, they don't care. And the proposed widening of Spring Grove Road is for 2 dump trucks to pass each other. Is this something you're already aware of? Caltrans proposes to widen Spring Grove Road so that 2 dump trucks can pass each other, one going down, one coming up, and they propose to cover it with asphalt. There is another possibility for remediation by using something in place. Are you aware of that remediation?
So you can answer that. Oh. And so for the stockpile locations, so those stockpile locations haven't been determined for the remedial alternative yet. So what will happen is we will get the remedial design and implementation plan, and so the proposed stockpile locations for the soil that's excavated and temporarily stockpiled will be proposed in that report. And so we will review those locations and determine if those are acceptable locations. For the widening, we were aware that it will be asphalt paved, but the
And then the other question about in-place remediation.
Oh, sorry. So this was a question that was asked during the April 11, 2014 meeting by Norbert. And so we will provide a response for the in situ. So in situ treatment or in situ as an alternative was looked at during the feasibility study, but ultimately determined to not be appropriate for the site.
May we ask on what basis that was determined?
So I need to provide that response to you, Norbert. I believe the main reason for not moving forward with in situ as a remedial alternative was cost, as well as some of the in situ treatments that were looked at may create some byproduct that was a byproduct that was not safe for the environment.
May we ask, that is not stated in the feasibility study that I've read. If the department has a document from Caltrans that actually scientifically addresses why on-site remediation, so that we don't have to speak Latin, doesn't work, apart from cost. I think the community really needs to know that, because as all of you know, the US EPA has been proceeding very actively towards what it calls green remediation, which is bioremediation, which obviously takes time, and it's limited by the depth of the root zone of the plants that would be involved in that. That would have to be planted over and over again to take out the lead, to take it up. The second one is some form of electrolysis. And the third one is soil chemical enhancement that, in so many words, to simplify, would clump the lead particles so that they can be removed without digging big pits. And it seems to the community, because many folks here have been farmers or ranchers. Ranchers here regularly do on-site remediation on their property because it keeps it in productivity. Here we're talking about wetlands for the most part. Yeah. And it would seem to us, rather than destroying the wetlands and the hyporheic zone underneath it, the gravel beds underneath it, to the extent that excavation would go beyond a foot or a foot and a half. That seems to us to be the least environmentally preferred alternative. Much more environmentally preferable is restoring the wetlands complex of the estuary that exists and that has existed for the last 15,000 years. Because that is one of the defining parts of what Albion is all about. And what we didn't hear from you, and we greatly appreciate DTS staff for the work you do. Everybody in this room does. But what we haven't heard from you, and certainly haven't heard from Caltrans, is does Caltrans have a place to obtain clean wetland soils to bring in that would match the ones that now exist in Lower Salmon Creek Valley? Because, as you may or may not know, Caltrans went to the Corps of Engineers and proposed to dig out a part of the Garcia River Valley to obtain soils. And then, as you had on one of your slides, a mitigation bank as a possible part of the mitigation program for this lead remediation project. And that is the key word for the Garcia River project, which is extremely controversial, probably incapable of being completed for a whole bunch of technical and legal reasons. But the key is Caltrans in the NES, which I hope all of you really read if you haven't, the one from May of last year, that the natural environmental study goes on at length about not importing wetland quality soil, hydric soils technically called, but instead importing soil from other Caltrans project sites, like the Navarro Ridge project just here in this immediate neighborhood, and where Caltrans winds up with thousands of cubic yards of excess material, we think erroneously, but that's what Caltrans is proposing to do. And so the question is, if it's that soil, for instance, hypothetically, the Laura Ridge soils, those are not those are not wetland soils. It takes many decades, if not hundreds of years, to create wetland soils. There is no feasible way to mitigate for what Caltrans is proposing to excavate by importing other, quote, clean soils. Because the mitigation period would be a century or multiple centuries.
Do you want to speak to what agencies?
Yeah, and so we will be working with the other agencies such as the Coastal Commission to ensure that in regards to the soil meeting the wetland standards or their wetland standards is adhered to. We only look at if soil is brought from a different project site, we ensure that there's no new introduction to the Santa Creek Bridge, any new introduction of a contaminant for that site. So if someone wants to bring soil from a dry cleaner site, right, we would essentially have criteria that analyzes for contaminants associated with the dry cleaner site to ensure that the soil doesn't have any exceedances for that. So for the source as well, right, that's still something that's going to be proposed in the reveal design implementation plan.
Yeah, just to add on, yeah, we understand, we're hearing the soil, where's the soil coming from is, a major concern. And so, of course, what we're looking at as regulators is to make sure no contaminants are coming in. But it's the Natural Resource Agency's responsibility to, we're going to partner with them to make sure, Fish and Wildlife, is this revegetation going to be done right? What sort of soil needs to be established here in order to maintain that, build back that native wetland habitat. And so they're the experts in that. And of course, we want to hear from you all too. You're seeing things, examples of what other, agencies are doing in your neck of the woods here, and, what are successful projects, what haven't been. Again, for the RDIP, we want to hear when we're at that phase of it. Absolutely, we want to see it be a success, but, we've got, as the lead, handling the lead CEQA, being the lead for the CEQA, we're really going to be leaning on the natural resource agencies to make sure that revegetation component is a success.
If I may,
Yeah.
there's a famous case out of Mendocino County called
You're next.
Sunstrom versus Mendocino, which stands for the proposition that mitigation cannot be speculative in the future.
And that goes to the environmental document.
Right. And what the RAP basically proposes, and what you collectively have articulated in summary form, is that you're proposing to do a negative declaration saying there are no significant effects, even as you don't know what the real project impacts are going to be.
Or what the project is.
Or what the project is. And so fundamentally under CEQA case law, and this is also a federally funded project, and your funding from Caltrans is in part federal money. So it's not just CEQA, but it's also the National Environmental Policy Act that applies here. And as you know, Caltrans has proposed that it be the lead agency to exempt you from federal environmental review. To us, this looks, no offense, but it really looks like somebody is playing a shell game, because you can't do an environmental review if you don't know what the whole project is, number one. And number two, you can't do a CEQA checklist to identify what the significant direct and cumulative effects may be unless you know all the component parts of the project. So for instance, not knowing the interim staging and the duration for that, and the incorporated mitigations to keep that material on place next to Ledford House, the only remaining public restaurant in Albion, as far as I know. That's a significant environmental issue, because the people who are going to be dining at Ledford House are going to be fewer than 50 feet away from two of those stockpiles. And that's a significant population of folks both local folks here in Albion as well as tourists who come here. So there are many issues, but I would hope that the secret document that the department produces, in fact, looks critically and independently at what the project in its totality is. And we don't know, you don't know, and we don't know right now what some of the components are. And secondly, update that checklist for CEQA purposes, because very candidly, and we've had some preliminary discussions about this, you have not been afforded by Caltrans, the project sponsor, with all the information that you need to be able to do a valid CEQA document. And the community thinks that needs to be an EIR, in part because there's substantial public controversy, but also because the project on its face is inconsistent with controlling regulatory requirements of the state and the federal government.
Thanks, Norbert. Do you want to respond to that, John? Or do you want to take that as a comment?
I'm sure we're going to receive that comment in the letter coming in a few days, so we'll be able to respond to it more formally in that letter. As I've stated before, section 15151 of the CEQA guidelines gives us our standard that we work with to establish what is deemed sufficient information for a project to prepare the CEQA document. And so, we at this point we feel that the information that we have for the RAP or the cleanup project meets that standard. And it's also that the RAP is a piece of the overall process, as we've been explaining. We have the feasibility study, we have the cleanup project or the cleanup document, and then we have the RDIP, which is coming forward. And the lead agency has the authority to determine at what stage of the process to implement the requirements of CEQA. And DTSC has determined that the cleanup document is the appropriate place to implement CEQA. And so we're continuing to move forward in that process. But it sounds like there's going to be a disagreement on that other part. So
We would hope that you would see it the way the community does.
Thanks, Norbert. And I think you were waiting in the back, and then, you were first. Sorry, you were first. I'm
Mine's
sorry.
very, very quick.
Okay.
I just wanted
Did you want to come up?
No.
Okay.
I'm Helen Jacobs. I just wanted to make sure that you all have walked there and not just looked at the maps. I mean, didn't you take time today to?
Not today.
Well, you really ought to before you leave, because it's beautiful, and you'll understand more of what we were all saying if you actually stand there.
And it's not that far from here.
Yeah, it's really not that far from here. It's really beautiful and needs to be protected. And this whole stockpiling idea, I think, will change in your minds if you stand there.
Thank you. Yes. So come on up.
Okay, I'm Rick Sanwarin, and I'm the chair of the Mendocino Group Sierra Club Coastal Committee. And so we've been very interested in this area for a long time in terms of public access and resources. For the last 30 years, it's been closed off by intimidation and fencing by the neighbors, but we believe that there is a basis for public access there, and that perhaps the Salmon Creek Bridge is our way down. I want to know if the right-of-way and the diamond-shaped area is an easement, or is it wholly owned? Anybody know that?
You have property lines on
And I don't know if it's an easement, but it's state right away, and so I can look into that and get back to you.
Okay. And do any of your reports so far discuss public access? Or Yeah, go ahead.
We don't handle public access, so we're specific on the remediation portion.
Mhm. How about the influence of the remediation on the public? If and when public access is reestablished, we have people here who've used that Salmon Creek Beach in the past and we haven't been able to get anywhere near it for a long time. So is there any consideration of people using the beach or the estuary area and their exposure to these contaminants in the past or in the future?
So I can't speak for in the past. So during the previous investigation, so 2015 and 2021, these investigations did include sampling on the west side of the bridge. And so so that's why the figure that I showed previously, let's see, on the screen, shows where exceedances were observed based on the sampling that was performed between 2015 and 2021.
It doesn't show all the way to the ocean.
And so as you move towards the west of the bridge, we do see a decrease in concentrations, and so that's why...
It was a steady decrease?
Yeah, decrease.
Oh, thank you. Okay. Good to know, and I'll look forward to have some discussion.
Anyone else? Come on in. And then your next, Jen?
I should take my mask off so those who can't hear well can see my lips.
Thanks.
My name is Allison Gardner, and I am a local. I have not lived here all my life, but most of it. I agree that the lead needs to be dealt with. My main concern here is the widening of the road down. I was asked by I think it was the bridge stewards, about 2020, 2021, something like that. I don't remember the exact year, but it was after the Caltrans had a botanist out and made a list of the plants that were out there, and they asked me to take a look at the list and go and see if I thought they did a good job. So I did. And, I did not have permission to go on private property. I stayed on the road, so all I can attest to is what can be seen from the road itself. And the one thing that I saw that stood out was that they had Pacific Gilia on the list. And I went down there and I saw a Gilia that did not look like Pacific Gilia. And I did not know of any other Gilia of that type around here. There's one other Gilia that grows in sand dunes that looks completely different. So I took a sample of it, went home, keyed it out. It is a different subspecies of Gilia capitata. The Pacific Gilia is Gilia capitata subspecies pacifica. What is growing down there is Gilia capitata subspecies tomentosa. And it is the northernmost known location of it. All the previous known locations were Sonoma and Marin County. And because of it being out of its usual range, I took my sample into Teresa Schollers, who is a really good botanist and was the botany teacher at College of the Redwoods and then Mendocino College for many years. And I think she still does a few classes. She's the professor emeritus and she is in charge of the College Herbarium. And she confirmed my identification on it. We took specimens which are filed at the College Herbarium, which is a member of the California Consortia of Herbaria. So it is legitimate and it's been added to the California Natural Diversity Database. And if they widen that road, it is going to annihilate probably 3/4 of the population. There are also a number of unusual plants down there that are not rare,
but are not common in this area and therefore ought to have some protection also under CEQA. They are specific to dry shaly slopes that are south-facing, and for that reason are very limited in their distribution around here. There's coffee fern, Philea andromedifolia, and there's Indian pinks, which are a little more common here, but are still not, you don't see them everywhere. You only see them in that sort of habitat, which are basically along the south-facing slopes of some of the river canyons and areas where there's shaly soil. There's also a lot of Dudleya, which we had trouble with Dudleya poaching here a few years back. And there's scarlet larkspur, which is a little bit more common, but is still not that common around here. And I mapped some of those, gave it to Norbert, who overlaid it over there on the Caltrans map. So my concern is basically that the road not be widened excessively. Caltrans, they're an expert at traffic control. They can have somebody at the top, somebody at the bottom, and control the trucks so one goes down, then another comes up. They don't need to widen it so two trucks can pass. So that's my current statement.
Well, some of you may know that, you're speaking my language. I was, in my previous career, I was a botanist, so all those plants that you say speak, or near dear to my heart. But on that, we, again, going back to working with the natural resources agencies, I mean, it'd be really great in the RDIP if we could, work with them to figure out a plan to really, collect the local seeds and make sure that those populations are enhanced as part of the process, and maybe the local native plant societies and you and others that care about the population.
Native plants also.
Yeah.
The Gilia is an annual. And I don't know who, I don't think it's Caltrans, but it could possibly be. I suspect that it's one of the neighbors there, has actually been mowing the strip of 5 feet along the roadside for the past 3 years during the time when the Gilia is blooming. So it has already really decreased its population right along the roadside there.
Yeah, and that's something that I think we've received other comments on from botanists already about a desire to work collaboratively with the natural resource agencies, I think, just to figure out a plan to protect those rare species. So thank you for your comment. Did you want to come up? Yeah.
Thanks for the video recording, by the way.
My pleasure. And thank you to everyone from DTSC for schlepping all the way up here. I think you can probably tell that this is a small but passionate community that we really kind of feel like it's kind of a special part of the world, and we really want to keep it that way. When you go over the Salmon Creek Bridge and you look down, you just see that beautiful verdant valley, and it was not always that way. It was a very scarred timber mill production area in a town of Whitesboro in the 1800s. And the planet has an amazing way of healing itself when given enough time. And I want to make two comments. One is kind of a hybrid question and comment. That my larger comment deals with Spring Grove Road. Allison, who is a really brilliant botanist, as you could tell, and was backed up by another brilliant botanist, Teresa Shoulders, identified a lot of rare or very uncommon plants that are on the north slope of Spring Grove Road. And widening that road would decimate those plants. And also, there are a lot of springs. It's called Spring Grove Road. There are a lot of springs that run along Spring Grove Road. And those are wetlands, and those are protected as waters of the United States. So I don't hear any discussion of the protection of those wetlands that extend along most of them seem to be kind of underneath the bridge on that north side of Spring Grove Road. In short, widening Spring Grove Road is a non-starter. It's going to decimate some rare and uncommon plants, and it's going to significantly impact some wetlands, which need to be addressed in some fashion, hopefully not by bringing in dirt from someplace else. The larger comment, though, that I have, that I just want to make sure folks who have not been involved in some of the Zoom meetings that we've had with DTSC, our group, Albion Bridge Stewards, I want to make sure that they're aware of is that this project proposes to clean up only a tiny bit of the lead-contaminated soil. Largely the area that Caltrans needs to be cleaned up in order for them to bring workmen in to replace the Salmon Creek Bridge. We happen to believe that replacement of that bridge is not necessary, not a bad idea. That's beside the point right now. But everyone needs to be aware of the fact that this is not cleaning up many decades of sloppy, environmentally damaging painting techniques on the part of Caltrans and its contractors. This is cleaning up one little tiny part of it so that Caltrans can work on a new bridge. It's a little like I go to a friend's house to help him paint, and I'm on top of a ladder, and I spill the whole gallon of paint, and it goes everywhere. And some of it goes down some steep hills. And I go down to my friend, I'm really sorry, I'm only going to clean up this little part here. I'm not going to clean up the whole thing because those slopes where the paint ran down, those are too hard to get to. That's kind of what DTSC/Caltrans, and I will lump them together for purposes of this comment because they kind of are one and the same, are saying it costs too much to do in situ remediation because that would also take too long. Well, if my friend said, if I tell my friend that it's going to take, a couple of days for me to get down those hills and clean up all that paint that I spilled, they're going to say, that's okay, have at it, I've got time. And we're kind of saying we've got time too. We would be quite happy to wait and let proper remediation take place, something that doesn't involve strip mining. My grandfather was a coal miner in western Pennsylvania, so I'm real familiar with strip mining. My family goes back to Mendocino County to the mid-30s, and I've lived in Albion since the late 80s. But there are methods of remediating the lead that don't involve strip mining that one little area. It doesn't fix the entire problem. It won't look the same for the rest of anyone's life who's in this room. You know how traffic or road repair construction projects have a long tail to them. Imagine how long it's going to take for the area just north of Mendocino, where they're working on the Jack Peters Creek Bridge. How long it's going to be before that's looking normal again. The same thing is going to be the case in the Salmon Creek Valley. Remediating it on site might take decades. Hey, it took 4 or 5 decades to pollute it. So, we've got time. But I'd be most interested in the comment about the question about dealing with wetlands on Spring Grove Road. That's the question of my grandma.
And if we have any additional information on, we're hearing there's a lot of concerns about the widening of Spring Grove Road. And, if we have any details to share about why it's absolutely necessary, or if there's any sort of, I know there's not necessarily flexibility, but what are the reasons that it has to be the width that it is, or can it be narrower by, some amount? Is there any kind of ability to change? And I know, again, it might be in the ardent stage, but if you have anything you wanted to say about that, and then Jim's comment about the springs, if that's been identified.
And so the reasons for widening Spring Grove Road, we'll have to get back to you on that, Jim. That is more than likely going to be presented in the remedial design implementation phase. For Spring Grove Road itself, only part of the area is going to be excavated. So this portion to the north side, which is on state right of way. The road itself isn't going to be excavated, or because the exceedances above the unrestricted land use level were observed there.
Point to where you mean.
So this area here, which is within the state right of way, is shown as the excavation area.
Is anyone else? Did you want to, you're pointing at,
No? Allison.
no? Yeah, who are you pointing at? And who is next? Who else had their hand up? Were you just
Was there
pointing
someone
at
else?
you, Anne Marie, or?
Yeah.
Or Al, and Allison, both of you?
I have
Okay.
another little thing I forgot.
Okay, so,
Oh, go ahead. Do yours first.
Okay.
Also, I wanted to say that from my experience around here, I really don't trust Caltrans not to accidentally bring in invasive plants. Just about everywhere where they have worked, they spread the bulbil watsonia, which just takes things over.
thank you. Stevie, are you next? And then Anne Marie? Okay.
Oh, Anne Marie, are you?
Go ahead, Steve. I'll go next.
Hi, it's Jamie Dahl, and I'm associated with Dahl & Associates as a partner and with the Albion Bridge Stewards as dear friends and fellow protectors of what we can. I had intended to start off with something else, but I'm going to speak to the road first. Actually, I'm going to speak to the fact that Caltrans has been out in the open since 2015 with respect to this problem, about which I'm virtually certain they've known longer. And here we are 9 years later, and we're talking about the implementation plan coming out in another 2 years.
That was just a guess.
And that was just a guess, and I'm not holding my breath. It really needs to be dealt with, number one. Number two, with respect to widening the road, the first assessment at which I looked, which should have a 2017 date, was so remiss in what it did and didn't do. I am not an expert in this, but I've worked on a number of projects where these concerns have come up, and we would never have gotten through the door with applications with that kind of study. However, what's going to happen with the road, as you know, is the bluff on the north side that is going to be excavated for the road widening. Hasn't been sampled, but if you look at the wind patterns, it is extremely likely that that area that couldn't be investigated because it was too bushy is probably full of toxics as well. And yet there's been no analysis of that, including in the road, the road widening. And it really needs to be addressed. Now to the 2 points I was going to make. The first is that I would hope that the responses to the comments tonight will go to everyone who attended. Not to the person making the comment, but everybody here wants to know what's going on. Yeah, they've heard the questions. Many people would have had the same questions and want the answers.
Yes.
Number two, these are, I'm sorry, my hay fever is affecting my throat. The thing is that these are taxpayer dollars. The planning for this project is essential for the public health and welfare. And it is extremely important that before anyone goes into further plan designs, and I'm sure there are some, but before it goes any further, that the points that were addressed tonight and the other points that you will get on May 22nd be evaluated, and your fellow state agency be told to take them into account in what goes into the implementation plan. Because coming back with the proposals that are out there now and going through a design process with those and then hitting the regulatory process is a non-starter. The secret document will be a problem. You know what? I think that everybody understands that. The point is that we want the project to work. We want a proposed project that does work, and we want it analyzed, and we want everything that needs to be considered taken into account, because we really like to stand up and say, Thanks, Allison. We'd really like to stand up and say, we support this. We support this. And right now, I can't imagine anyone who supports it. So thanks, and thanks for making Dennis. Particular thanks for those who don't know. Dennis arrived in a really rough storm and made his way through that storm down the road to check out the project area. And I think everybody both admires you for doing it and really appreciates it. So thanks.
All right. Thank
We
you so
look
much
forward
for
to
your
your response to that.
Oh boy, hopefully that is a comment, anything in particular. Thank you for that, Stevie, and absolutely, we'll make sure, you know, the topics that we're hearing today, that, you know, you get a response to those topics. It'll go we'll have it available in the libraries, and we'll also have it posted online, and we'll also send it to our email list, so everyone will get a copy of the responses. So I think Anne Marie's next, and then you.
You want it first? No, I'm going to the question.
Yeah, you can decide.
Thanks for coming here to Albion. We were talking about the Ledford House and possible dump sites. And earlier we heard your mission statement is protect the health of the environment, the people, the plants, the animals, and also the economical vitality. Nowhere in your wrap or in the study did I see anything mentioned about the economy that will be severely affected by all these truckloads that might be driving up and down and all around. We're having to put up with Caltrans, who they have so many projects going on, it's almost impossible to go anywhere and get to a job site and back. And in terms of Caltrans, they definitely don't oversee their subcontractors. We had, from the geological investigation that they did by the Albion River Bridge, they left all what they drilled for 2 weeks next to the bridge, covered with a flimsy black plastic. The plastic blew off, the cartons opened up, everything got soaked. You could hear we don't trust Caltrans very much. So the Ledford House is well known by people far and wide, and you know, if they hear about this, they have an event tonight. They're busy running a restaurant. They can't, you know, take time to come tonight. But what I'm walking away with feeling, we're putting the cart before the horse. You want us to approve your RAP. You want us to improve your study, the initial study and that CEQA document. And with everything we're pointing out, you say, well, you can comment on that later on. This is not a way to do business, and as Norbert pointed out, it's not legal. So I hope you also look at your legal expertise, and we're all saying, this needs an EIR. There are too many problems. This is not a negative declaration. And so this is crucial that we look at that. We're asking for an accurate, complete, and plainly worded restoration plan that is sustainable of the environment. And the toxins are not only in the few areas that were tested. They're in the air, they're in the waters, which includes all the waters all around, and the creek and the bluffs and the dump sites where this maybe toxins have been dumped. An area was believed to have maybe also gotten some of the toxins when the landowners wanted to have things temporarily cleaned up. And we showed up to the county. We didn't support that because it's not dealing with the toxins when you just cover it up with plastic and then bring in a whole bunch of rocks, and by doing that, disperse more toxins. And the county came without the permit and we had to stop them. I mean, it seems not the job of the locals to constantly supervise what all these agencies are doing or not doing or should be doing. And there's also a danger of spreading lead while transporting this lead, while moving it from one vehicle to another. And you know, you did notice that it's a windy area. What about an earthquake? We're not far from San Andreas Fault. Stockpiling toxins to me seems ridiculous. Doesn't matter whether it's 1 day or 90 days. We're an earthquake country. And we have storms, we have like high tides, and that have done quite some damage around here locally. So in your RAP report, you say that no further action is recommended for the natural slopes and river terrace areas. I disagree with you. And I also am alarmed to read that no further action will take place according to the RAP for the privately owned parcels to the west and southeast of the Salmon Creek Bridge. And some landowners didn't allow you to check their property. Maybe they want to sell it and that doesn't sell that well. I don't know why, but Caltrans wants it to clean up as fast as possible so they can tear down the old bridge, build a new one. And the local neighbors who own property there want it to be dealt with immediately. They're tired of, you know, not being to use their site the way they want to. And you mentioned three main areas: air quality, noise, and biological resources. But as you can hear, we just mentioned so many more, so we probably have 20 areas that really need attention. And so therefore, it really needs an EIR. Thank you for putting up with us. And I would like to ask Jim, is the video you're taking visible for anybody? Where will it be?
Yes, this will be on YouTube, and it will be accessible through the Albion Bridge Stewards website at savehighway1.org.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anne-Marie. And, you know, we recognize it's not the job of the locals to, you know, be the eyes and ears, but we really appreciate it. And I know that, you know, anything that you observe, you know, we're happy to follow up with. And we, you know, I know that recently Dennis did have a meeting with the county just to kind of understand sort of the history, you know, some of the things that you were referring to. So, you know, anything, you know, we do want to hear from you. We can't be out here every day. So thank you for sharing with us.
I just have a question.
Oh, sure. Okay, you first, and then you're next in the back.
Have all of you been to the Ledford House? Have all of you been to Spring Road? Have you?
Some of us have, and some of us haven't.
Well, it's 5 minutes from here.
Yes.
I would love to drive you to it. I mean, because how can this become a map on the wall when it's 5 minutes from here? I mean, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we'll be.
That doesn't. to me, that doesn't show caring about the topic at all, if you don't go look at the physical thing.
We'll be stopping by tomorrow.
Yes.
I'm sorry?
We'll be stopping by tomorrow.
Oh, tomorrow?
Yeah, we got here this afternoon.
Then I'll be happy to take you. I'll be happy to meet you.
Well, thank you. Looks like we've got some great tour guides available.
I'm right down the block.
Okay.
At the beginning of Navarre Ridge.
All right, awesome. All right, thank you. Come on in.
Okay, it's very short.
Okay.
Because
And we're, yeah, go ahead.
it's addressing what part of your overview and what Anne Marie brought up. It says that you are evaluation and cleanup of contaminated properties. I'm curious, what is the structure of how you do that?
Yeah, very good question. Yeah, I can speak a little bit to it, and I don't know, Maria, if you want to add on, or you want to take it? It's the polluter pays principle. So we're a cost recovery organization. And I'm going to pass it to you for the rest of it, Monica. Yeah, so it's not, typically it's not, you know, we have some sites that are state funds, but for those are when we can't find a responsible party to.
Or, yeah, when they don't exist anymore. So this project is obviously funded by Caltrans, which is also obviously funded by your tax dollars, my tax dollars as well. But across the board, all of our projects are funded by, as Asha said, the polluter. I'm not sure what the other part of your question was, though.
Well, earlier it was mentioned that Caltrans isn't going to be supervising this, that you are the supervisor.
Yes.
And you don't have funding for it, is what I'm
Oh,
hearing.
no. So that isn't the concern at all. So Caltrans will be funding our oversight. They will pay for us to watch over their work.
Now, does that seem odd to you?
So it is not odd. I mean, I'm going to tell you. Would it normally? Yes. But this is how the cleanup work works. Otherwise, all cleanup efforts would fall on the taxpayer. And I don't believe anybody wants to pay for the hundreds of millions of dollars of cleanup that I know is going on through the Berkeley office. We force the polluters, which can include Caltrans, it can include a dry cleaner, it can include AstraZeneca. Not everybody is pleased that they have us to deal with. They often aren't. And they receive bills for this. I recognize that it looks like it's a conflict of interest, but it really isn't. We are just, in order to be able to clean up the property, somebody has to pay. And so we are making the polluter pay. That's what it comes down to.
Thank you. Okay. Oh, I see. Okay, who was first? I think Bill was first, and then, okay. Are you okay coming up here, Bill?
Oh, I think I can manage.
Pave away through the chairs.
Push your chairs around.
And I'm just
If I
going
fall
to do.
down, somebody help me.
Uh-oh, all right. And we are after 8, but we got started about 15 after. We're gonna wrap up so soon, but we'll stay a little bit longer.
Yeah, it's getting past my bedtime. This is a good place to start with the polluter pays. Okay, so that's Caltrans. Are they cleaning up the mess down there?
They will be.
Only just the part they need, not the rest. And I don't know what percentage of the pollution you're getting is going to get cleaned up. I know that following Jim's analogy of throwing off paint, this is more like throwing off a bucket of ashes or talcum powder or something in a windy day. Because when they were doing that, the wind was really going. There's no way to clean it up. And you may as well bite the bullet and say, sorry, Caltrans, unless you want to do more and do as absolute much as is needed that we can do, we're not going to do this. It's because it's different
to do just what Caltrans wants so they can build a bridge and to actually follow the meaning of the law that the polluter pays. That's them. The only part that to me seems to be really necessary to clean up is the house site, that residence is down there. Those people didn't do anything wrong and ended up with their place being polluted. But the rest of it, it's not going to work.
Thanks for your comment, Bill. I think, Norbert, you were next, and then what was your name again?
Warren D. Smith.
Warren. Let Warren go? Okay.
All right, Warren, looks like Norbert wants you to go first.
You can widen the road.
Yep.
To Jerry.
Turn lane 2.
So, one of the things that I heard here is that part of the reason you're doing at least some of your ideas about the remediation is that it's cost effective or it's less expensive. But aren't you billing Caltrans? So what does it matter what the cost is? Another thing I thought of is, okay, so now you're on the site and Caltrans is down there. Do you really have the ability to stop them from doing something that you would feel is wrong? I mean, they're the ones paying the bills, and so do you feel you can tell them to stop? Do you feel that they will listen to you?
I would like to add, just, is somebody from your organization going to be on site so that you can monitor what Caltrans is doing, or are you just going to sign off and then let them go to town? Just.
There will be routine visits.
And how often are those?
Don't know yet.
Oh,
And, yeah, and part of it is, and correct me if I'm wrong, but when we do site visits, we don't always announce it so that we can see what's happening. Yeah. And then Warren's question about the criteria about cost being a factor. Do you want to talk a little bit more about, the 9 criteria, or, cost being one of them, but...
So cost is one of the criteria we look at. It isn't one of the overall determining factors. So when we look at the alternatives that were further refined and evaluated for the draft new action plan, it is just one of the criteria. So we look at, again, these 9 criteria you see on the screen, and cost is just one portion of that. So we look at implementability, how it will do on the long-term effect and its performance, as well as whether it would reduce the toxicity, whether it be its mobility, volume. So there's other criteria we also evaluate each alternative based on, and so that is part of the draft.
And then his last question about, do we have the ability to stop them, or I don't know, you want to talk about fines, or like what our oversight, if we see that they're doing something that is, in what circumstances, what authority do we have?
So we do have the ability to stop, so if we do a site visit and we see something that isn't supposed to be done, we do have the ability to stop the work and stop the work and address it there, or figure out a way to address it. So let's say during our site visit, there's a storm, we see if there is the potential for temporary stockpile, and we see the measures that were put in place for this temporary stockpile aren't doing what they're supposed to do, then we have the ability to stop the work that's going on and make sure that Caltrans does do something to remedy that. If we see, for another example, fugitive dust leaving the site, we do have the ability to stop the work to make sure that they do something to stop dust from being generated due to the work. In terms of fines, I'm not too sure if
there are potential fines associated with waste management. There are very specific regulations on waste management that DTSC is in charge of, and we can input and we can enforce them.
Do you do that with state agencies,
Yeah.
for example?
I don't know that I've done it with, I've been with
I
DTSC for 6
don't
years.
which one is
We do,
fine.
I will tell you, we do it with the Navy.
Well, yeah, everybody does it.
But like, the Navy pays us too, and we do enforce with the Navy. We enforce with everybody.
Okay, Norbert, you're next. Oh, did you have a follow-up on that, Lauren, or did you want to wait for Norbert?
Maybe you said it when I was walking back. I did not hear how often you're going to be there.
Oh, we don't know that yet.
It's not a regular schedule. They're kind of inspections that emerge
so
as.
This brings up my feeling that Caltrans is quick. They have big equipment. They don't care about us. And so all of a sudden something is done, the road is wider than it says it is. They took out all these plants they're not supposed to. What then?
And this is where we can exercise our authority and impose fines or other measures. Yeah. Well, I know you all are going to help us with drone footage and those kinds of things, so keep up the good work there.
Right, but then the hours it takes you to get here.
The point he's making
I know it'd be
is
great if
that
we had an office up here. Yeah.
some things can't be undone.
Yeah.
They just,
And we understand, yeah, I mean, definitely a message we're hearing loud and clear is that you want us to make sure that we are exercising our authority and you don't trust, based on, past things, your relationship. And so we're definitely hearing that loud and clear. So thank you. Anyone else? Norbert, I know you're next, and then you want to go after Norbert?
Just a short one.
Short one, okay. Is that okay, Norbert? Okay.
Came up that this used to be a house site, like town site, so there's probably going to be archaeological finds, either materials or maybe even burials. And is there a plan for handling those lead-contaminated artifacts?
There will be. I can actually address that one because I've dealt with other sites for it. So there's always a cultural resources plan associated, with the RDA, which is the remedial design implementation plan. And as part of the cultural resources, there was a focus on how best to manage those resources, which in some cases, it obviously depends on what the resources are, but I do know of various tribal locations where there have been some materials that have been impacted. We communicate with that agency or with the representative for that group, so with the tribal government, and we determine how best they want to handle it. In some situations, they want it replaced and buried in that location. Other times they want it stored elsewhere. So it is something that is managed and it will be part of the RDA.
Okay, you're up, Norbert.
Can you go back to figure 15 site plan?
And before you go, was there anyone else, or I think Norbert, you might be the last commenter.
Everyone wants to speak after this.
Well, we're going to need to wrap it up, and thank you.
It's only 6 o'clock in Hawaii, and it's only 3:40.
I know.
3:20
Time stands still.
in Whitesboro. So, first of all, thank you to the department staff for coming up. All of us admire the work that you do, and the community wants to be supportive of the department, to be the very best that the department can be, realizing the context is Caltrans, which basically has no stock value to speak of in Albion. So first of all, I want to focus on the wrap, because that's why we're here today. And it begins with the title of the wrap. Behind Dennis is figure 15 from the wrap, and it says that it's the Salmon Creek Sandblast Waste Abatement Project. But if you actually look at the map beyond Dennis, you will see that no single part of this project involves Salmon Creek. From the very title of this thing, it's misleading.
Can we add the word bridge in there?
There used to be, but Caltrans took it out. Secondly, look at that map really carefully. Can you tell which, because there's a legend over on the left side, can you tell which part Geocon, the contractor to Caltrans, is actually proposing be cleaned up? If you look really carefully and you remember your geography class in high school, when we don't know what the boundary of something is, but we want to kind of say there's sort of a boundary we're thinking about, we use dashed lines. If we know what the boundary is, we use a solid line. Now, if you look at that map really closely, you know, for those of you who have really great eyesight, you will not see a single solid line boundary for what this project is, or is proposed to be. There are perimeter lines that are in part overlaid by different shades of yellow, but they're all dashed lines. And if you go to the legend, and you read the legend in bold black, it says that all boundaries are approximate. In other words, you couldn't take that map to the bank and get a 5-cent loan. The third point is it's a two-dimensional map, when it should really be a three-dimensional or a four-dimensional map. Three-dimensional because what that map does not tell you is the depth to which the lead is actually present. The way Geocon tested for the lead is they used hand augers that are about less than 3 feet long, and Geocon did a map that showed where they were going to sample, but Caltrans was on site doing the sampling and told Geocon where to sample and where not to sample. All of us who took statistics know that you immediately get an F if that is how you do a statistical sample. You cannot have the person who's paying the freight, who is the polluter, tell you where to sample. It invalidates the sample. That's number 3, if I've got my numbers right. Number 4, if you look closely at the top where it says parcel 2 on the left side of the mouth of the creek, that's Whitesboro Beach, which under the laws of California is a public beach up to the mean high tide line. Lucille Vineyard, Sierra Club Conservation Chair, and I, in the late 1970s, walked out there because Lucille was the one who got that listed on the county local coastal program as a public access way for all the folks in Albion and everywhere else. There's not a single sample for lead in Whitesboro Cove Beach. But if you go down there, you'll see the beach actually has a beach berm, and it is very likely, given the hydrology of Salmon Creek and the ocean, that that beach berm is the place where a lot of the lead particles have wound up. There isn't a single sample in that area. Of course, Caltrans is not proposing to clean it up. But if you don't sample, you don't know. And the department is being asked to basically say, we'll go along with that. The scope of this plan is wholly inadequate, because even really simple three-dimensional modeling with time, and thanks to some of you from the stewards, we've got the record of many of the sandblast events. We know the times during which they occurred, so we can actually model how the wind, the water, and humans in wheelbarrows and trucks and bulldozers moved the contaminated sand from the sandblast waste around. And this map doesn't show it, but the single biggest lead contaminated site is on the corner of the cabin on the Magruder property. It's 6,100 parts per million. Remember, the background level is 9 parts per million. The Magruder Paoli family, there's 6 different families involved, basically have a cabin on top of a toxic waste pile. They obviously deserve to have Caltrans restore their property. But I want to go a step further, because for those of you who were in the meeting, the Zoom meeting with the department, when Mr. Zimmerman said cleaning up this site had nothing to do with replacing the Salmon Creek Bridge, well, I went back to my California Transportation Commission files, and in April of 2022, Caltrans had in front of the Transportation Commission a request for funding and specifically disclosed that the lead cleanup, lead abatement is for the Salmon Creek Bridge Replacement Project by bridge project number. In other words, the representation that the lead remediation project is separate from the bridge project is false. That alone makes the current proposed negative declaration invalid, because there is a whole project, because Caltrans told the Transportation Commission that there was. I want to now just very quickly point out the stewards have produced 3 illustrative maps, which all will be in the stewards' comment letters to you. These are just large prints. And the one on the right is a County of Mendocino parcel map. If you look at it closely, you'll see parcel lines. And the key point about that map is threefold. One is it shows Caltrans's identified staging areas relative to Ledford House. Those are the reddish-brown polygons in the upper middle. Secondly, it shows by red overlay, primarily on the right side of Salmon Creek Bridge, the areas that are our best interpretation from figure 15 of what the shallow 1 to 1.5 foot lead cleanup envelope would look like on both sides of the creek. But you'll notice specifically that, again, no part of what Caltrans is proposing, or Geocon is proposing for Caltrans, does any lead remediation in Salmon Creek or the banks of Salmon Creek. There are other interesting things about that map, and maybe let me just point out one. It's also on the Geocon map behind Dennis, and that is the second biggest concentration of lead. Caltrans and Geocon talk about aerially distributed lead. In other words, while the sandblasting was going on, the wind blew it around. But the second biggest dump site at 5,600, if I recall correctly, parts per million of lead, is right where the public stops at the south end of the bridge, where the road goes into Pacific Reef subdivision. Right there, you'll see a berm. It now has a fence and a stay out sign, but for decades, that was where families stopped because they could see the ocean and the cove, and the kids would climb up on the berm because it gave them the best view, because the berm was, call it 4 or 5 feet higher than the surrounding area. Caltrans, or one of its contractors, put that dirt there. That was not blown there by wind, because there's no wind that blows on the Albion coast that would create a strictly parallel berm to the highway in that location. Couldn't exist. Finally, on that map, and it's also behind Dennis, but it's not shown, is Caltrans in 2018, 2019 stripped Spring Grove Road. That was for the interim lead remediation project on the Magruder property, when Caltrans couldn't access its drill sites for the bridge replacement project. So Caltrans graded Spring Grove Road from where the pavement ends on top all the way down to where the gate is that keeps the public out right now. And guess where they put that dirt? A linear berm that in part is on Whitesboro Farm and in part is on Mars property, right at the foot, on the left side, at the foot of Spring Grove Road. That's important by itself, but the other thing that's important is there is a drainage from the springs in the bluff that comes down, and that drainage runs right through the area where Caltrans dumped all of the lead contaminated dirt. And that drainage goes into Little Salmon Creek, and in 290 feet, Little Salmon Creek discharges into Big Salmon Creek. And this area is on Salmon Creek is intertidal. So it's estuary. That is not analyzed in the RAP. I'm going to quickly, really wrap up fast. So the second graphic, which is in the middle beyond Jim Hyde, highlights the areas in salmon color, forgive the pun, where Caltrans performed substantial excavation grading of lead-contaminated soil and vegetation to gain access for geotechnical subsurface drilling in 2018, 2019. And what is important about that is three quick things. One is many of those graded areas exceed what the county authorized Caltrans to do. Secondly, much of that material was hauled off-site, but to an undisclosed location. But importantly, in that context of our asking for the boring logs, Caltrans produced to us boring logs not for that area, but across the creek. And at the North Tower, at the foot of the North Tower, Caltrans established that the first 60 feet vertical were sand. The boring depth for the geocon subsurface testing was less than 3 feet. It is very likely, because this is immediately below the bridge, that just by gravity alone, sandblast lead would have fallen, assuming relatively little wind at that point, would have fallen straight down. And if you have 60 feet vertical of sand substrate, the lead by weight, by density, is not going to stop 1.5 feet below the surface. Because there's a hyporheic zone of gravel in this area where the lead could very readily be moved by subsurface water. Geocon totally missed that part of the environment. Moving to the image all the way on the left, that simply illustrates, again, that if you look at the lower part, the Salmon Creek Bridge is on the left. If you look at the lower part relative to the Salmon Creek estuary, you will see that no part of what, because here we map very carefully the edges shown on the map behind Dennis, and no single part of what Geocon and Caltrans propose to restore involves the banks of Salmon Creek or the estuarine water coverage area where waters, both fresh water coming down Salmon Creek as well as tidal waters, regularly inundate the area. And that reason that's important, of course, is because of the tides. The outflow of tidal action likely dragged lead particles down into the Salmon Creek estuary. And Dennis, if you know of any sample that was taken in Salmon Creek, I would love to know that, because I've looked really carefully and I've plotted every one of those by coordinates, and not a single one that I've been able to plot from the RAP, from all the data in the RAP, is in Salmon Creek, on bank or bed of the creek. So the point about the last graphic is also that Allison Gardner's biological observations of rare Gilia and locally unusual other plants in relation to Spring Grove Road, that map shows those by shapefiles. And those are drone aerials that were taken by the Albion Bridge Stewards. And these are obviously volunteer documents, but they're intended to provide the department with additional information that is substantive. Because we all know that Caltrans regularly comes back and says public comments should be disregarded because they're not expert testimony. This material can be field checked. And for the environmental document by the department to be able to stand, it needs to be, all this information needs to be field checked. And I would respectfully submit that the initial study needs considerable work, and the stewards will be submitting a substantial body of comments relating to that. So again, thank you to all of you for coming up to beautiful Albion. And
Pardon me?
Thank you for carpooling.
Oh, yes, I know. We had a good road trip up. Yeah, and thank you all. Thank you for all the work that you put into taking care of your community and environmental protections. We really appreciate it. And for the wealth of information that you've provided us. It's great to meet some of you that we haven't before and see those of you that we have in person. And we look forward to receiving your written comments. Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.
And let's thank you for coming back.